right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk, Uygur, and Kasparian with you guys as we shuffle papers heading into the show here. All right, we got Kavanaugh. That's coming up in a minute. You guys are all going to get that. And then a little bit later, Rick Scott's in trouble in Florida. Wilbur Ross is in trouble on the planet. Speaking of that, the China tariff situation explained a little bit more thoroughly and why it might talk about a global economic collapse. It's at least some possibility. Women that voted for Trump turning on him. Lots and lots of news in this show. Of course, as always, to get the whole show anytime you want, become a member at tyt.com/join. All right, Casper, let's do it. Let's jump right into it.
All right. Following attempted rape allegations against Brett Kavanaugh, and of course the accuser is Christine Blasey Ford, the smear tactics from the right have begun. And they have begun aggressively, they are relentless, and it also includes quite a bit of funding. And I'll give you some examples of how it's all going down. So first, there is the Judicial Crisis Network. This is a group of conservatives who aggressively fight to have pro-corporate conservative Supreme Court judges nominated. And so they have decided to put $1.5 million behind a television ad blitz that features a person who has been friends with Kavanaugh for 35 years. Okay, so that's the beginning of it. Also, the Judicial Crisis Network has already pledged to spend $5 million backing Kavanaugh. So their first ad was released immediately. They released it last night, Monday night, and we have it for you just so you get a sense of the tactics they're planning on using. Take a look.
Her allegations cover a whole range of conduct from boorishness and to rough horseplay to actual attempted rape. And so obviously if you go to rape, yes, that is a really serious.
All right, little technical difficulty there, no problem. We're gonna get the video for you in just a minute. Just give me a thumbs up when it's ready. All right, let's go.
Friends with Brett Kavanaugh for 35 years. Never thought about doing a TV commercial. I'm not involved in politics. I'm a teacher. I'm a coach. I believe that we need to have bright, curious, open-minded, thoughtful, empathetic people who are judges. And I trust that Brett is that person. He's dedicated to his work. He's dedicated to his family. He's of the highest integrity as a person. And I believe that he would be a great Supreme Court justice.
So that ad features a teacher who claims to have known him for 35 years. The tactic is, hey, look at all these people who can vouch for him, vouch for his character. Because, you know, people who have been accused of rape, you know, everyone has to dislike them throughout their entire lives. It's impossible for that person to have a group of people in their personal lives that like them and respect them, while they could also in their, you know, in private do things like attempted rape.
So, I think the substance of the ad is pretty weak. A lot of people liked OJ too. That didn't mean he didn't do it. He was a very likable guy outside of murdering two people. But I think the more important part of this is, that's fascinating. So $5 million they've announced that they're gonna spend, and $1.5 million they've already put into TV ads. Where's the money coming from? Is it concerned citizens who are genuinely pro-life and they care about that and they think Kavanaugh is pro-life? Is it genuine citizens who think, no, I don't know anything about Kavanaugh being against Roe versus Wade, because that's the official Republican stance, right? I just think he's such a wonderful principled jurist that I'm looking forward to having him confirmed on the Supreme Court. So I'm gonna give $5, $10, $27 to make sure I run these ads. No. The funny thing is, it has nothing to do with the hot button topics that you're seeing. No, the ad is funded by very wealthy people and corporations, because Kavanaugh is massively pro big business. So they need his vote in there, not for Roe versus Wade, not for anything else. They need it to make sure that he advances a pro corporate agenda. So those donors are like, oh, he is accused of attempted rape. Whatever, roll in the $5 million. Let's get this guy in the court so he can rule against our employees all day long. That's what's being played here. You think $5 million materializes out of nowhere for this? No, there's people who think, I'm gonna make a buck off of Kavanaugh being on the Supreme Court.
Yeah, absolutely. And he is a pro-corporate judge. His past rulings and decisions prove that. And the fact that they were able, this organization, the Judicial Crisis Network, was able to get this funding secured so quickly tells you something. There are people who are worried about their bottom line. At the end of the day, rape doesn't matter. Attempted rape doesn't matter. His character doesn't matter. The rulings that he might have in regard to social issues or women's health doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And by the way, the Judicial Crisis Network is just one organization that includes people that are now attacking Ford and her allegations. There's also Dennis Prager, and he wrote an op-ed for the National Review that was disgusting. And so I'm going to give you a few of the excerpts. Let's go to graphic 62. Prager, who once called the idea of college rape culture a gargantuan lie, argues in his piece for National Review that the allegations against Kavanaugh should be ignored because they tell us nothing about Brett Kavanaugh since the age of 17.
So there's two different parts to that. One is the rape culture being a gargantuan lie. I don't know what he means by that, but I know what he encourages by that. He encourages people to go, it's not a big deal. Just don't worry, don't spend too much time on it. So when victims ask for more protections from universities, don't sweat it, it's all a lie. It's all a lie. So that's a terrible thing to spread. The second part of it is him saying, look, this happened when he was 17, it doesn't tell us anything about him being 53. That actually I find to be the least offensive of all the defenses of Kavanaugh. But hold, he's gonna get to really, really offensive in a second.
I disagree with you. I think attempted rape at any age says something about a person, right?
No, I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm saying of all their defenses of Kavanaugh, that's the least offensive. Do you see what I'm saying?
Because it's a low bar.
Yeah, I hear you, it's a low bar, but look, and we've had this discussion before. So if he was accused of this a year ago when he was 52, well, it's a no-brainer, right? Everybody knows that he's responsible for it. If he was accused when he was, as we talked about on Friday's show, I believe, 12, well, that's a different situation when he was 12. So I think that their best defense is, well, 17 is closer to 12 than it is to 52. It doesn't mean that I believe in that defense, but the other defenses are way, way worse because they're saying like, oh, what happened to her is not that big a deal. And now Prager's about to make those arguments. The Judicial Crisis Network spokesperson is about to make those arguments on CNN. I think those are horrific arguments. They should go nowhere near them, which only leaves them this, or she's just made it up entirely. I think that's otherwise they got nothing.
So in this National Review piece, he also writes, this is another example, keep in mind, like this is what he's focusing on here. This is another example of the moral chaos sown by secularism and the left. Okay, let's stop for a second. By the way, Dave Rubin, you should feel really proud of yourself for working for this guy. That's the problem? Secularism is the problem?
Yeah.
The chaos sown by secularism is the problem? You don't think that it's problematic that someone who might be a new Supreme Court justice in the highest court in the country might have carried out attempted rape? You don't think that that's the problem? You think that secularism is the problem?
I mean, but get a load of that inverted logic where they live in the upside down. So he's like, if people were more religious, they would realize that charges of attempted rape are no big deal. He's arguing that, Prager's arguing that that is the moral position. The immoral secular left position is attempted rape is a big deal. Okay, look, you make your own decision on which one you think is moral and which one is not moral. But the way that they turn things on their head is amazing. Somehow he's made it so that the moral position is supporting attempted rape. Okay, but look, keep going. I'm telling you, it gets really, really, really bad.
In any society rooted in Judeo-Christian values, it is understood that people should be morally assessed based on how they behave over the course of their lifetime. Early behavior being the least important period in making such an assessment. Okay, so I have a billion things to say about this. First of all, I gotta go back to the whole secularism. So you don't believe in secularism? Do you believe in the Constitution? So do you think that we should be forced to believe a religion? Like, what does that even mean?
Prager is like what drives me crazy about the right wing is that they respect guys like Prager because it's such a low bar. Most of the people in the party are total morons like Donald Trump and George W. Bush. So when somebody with a pulse shows up, they're like, Dennis Prager. Oh my God, he's got a university where he teaches how bad the secular left is. But think about how irrational he is on every front. To Anna's point there, you don't believe in secularism. So you think what? Church and state should be combined, that religion should rule us? But Prager, you're Jewish. I got news for you. Your religion isn't going to win. And I've got further news for you because apparently, even though you've got a whole university you've named after yourself, let's just note how obnoxious that is. And the other guy who did that was Donald Trump. Anyway, historically, which you've apparently never studied, when Christians or any religion rule over Jews and other minorities, it doesn't end well. When they say, hey, I'm going to use my religion to rule, and by the way, you're in a minority religion. Have you studied any history? Do you know how that ends? Oh yeah, I got a great idea. Let's make sure that we don't do secularism. We combine church and state. Oops, I'm in the minority religion. I didn't think that through because I'm one of the dumbest guys alive.
Okay, so let's get to the second part of that excerpt that is insane. So look, I don't care if he did this at 17. For me, it doesn't matter because guess what normal people don't do at the age of 17? Attempted rape, right? So it's one thing if, hey, when I was 17, I decided to drink and get behind the wheel and I got caught in a DUI. Like, if that was an allegation against Brett Kavanaugh, I'd be like, okay, come on, like we've all made mistakes, let's move on. This is attempted rape, okay?
Yeah,
this is different from any other youthful indiscretion that people could be accused of.
So look, and DUI obviously is very serious, and that's why it's an important and interesting conversation, et cetera. And that's why we said in the beginning, if you're gonna go back to high school, it's gotta be a high bar. It doesn't get much higher than attempted rape. And in terms of some of the attacks against Kavanaugh, they're all pointing to how he used to admit to drinking a lot in high school. Look, for people who are looking to corroborate Professor Ford's story that he was stumbling drunk, that is relevant. For people looking to say he was a bad guy in high school for over drinking, that is not relevant. I want to be clear because they're going to set up straw man arguments. We don't care that he drank too much. We care about what he did on that day when he drank too much and allegedly did the attempted rape. That's what we care about, not about the drinking. So, but for God's sake, let's get to his mom and his wife and what he thinks.
So he tries to make it seem like, getting groped is not that big of a deal, that people in his personal life had to deal with it and they handled it just fine. My mother was groped by a physician. She told my father about it. My father told the physician that if he were to do that again, he would break his hands. And then he talks about his wife. Let me get to this because this gives you even more detail into his way of thinking. He says, when my wife was a waitress in her mid-teens, the manager of her restaurant grabbed her breasts and squeezed them on numerous occasions. She told him to buzz off, figured out how to avoid being in places where they were alone, and continued going about her job. That's empowerment.
No, it's not. No, it's not. So you think the right approach for, my God, your mom and your wife is when men grab their breasts, there should be no consequences. There should be no legal consequences. That's not sexual assault. That most of the consequences should be, hey, I told them to buzz off.
No, that the onus is on the woman, right? Because if your manager or higher up in the company that you're working for gropes you and makes you uncomfortable, tell him to buzz off, and then the onus is on you to avoid contact with him. The onus is on you to make sure you're not in a room alone with him.
That's not, what part of that is empowerment?
He's a clown, I mean, come on.
And he noticed, he said his wife was in her mid-teens, so she was what, 14, 15, 16 years old, and this guy's constantly sexually assaulting her at work. He puts that as a positive example of, come on, what's the big deal? Everybody played with my wife's breasts when she was a teenager. Everybody played with my mom's breasts. What's the big deal, man? They just brushed it off. But even if you don't think that's a big deal, and there's something really weird and off about you if you don't think that's a big deal, but remember that those things often lead to the guy not buzzing off, but being encouraged that no cops were called and that there were no real consequences, and leading to much more serious things. It reminds me of the Roy Moore story, where he kept hitting on a teenager who was a waitress at a restaurant he used to frequent, and then one day he tricked her into getting in the car, according to the allegations, and then started ripping her clothes off and forcing her head down onto his lap. Oh, well, there goes your buzz off strategy, Dennis Prager. What a brilliant thing that was. Hey, Dennis Prager, if somebody comes and punches you in the face, why don't you just tell them to buzz off? What's the big deal? Man up, Dennis, man up. Oh God, these days when everybody wants to go to the police and actually press charges on assault or attempted rape. Oh, in the good old days, we just spit on it, right? I remember those days. Our coach was telling us you get hurt, you get spit on it, right? Now, I don't want anybody punching Dennis Prager. I don't want anybody doing anything physical. But these guys, they're abhorrent. I knew that they would go to the bottom of the barrel, and immediately they're like, he's basically saying, so he pinned her down, tried to rip off her bathing suit, held her mouth closed down while his friend turned up the volume so they couldn't hear her screams. What's the big deal? Why didn't you just tell him to buzz off? Yeah. That's who Dennis Prager is. Yeah. Any right-winger who looks up to Dennis Prager, I feel sick to my stomach for you, because that's so embarrassing. That's the intellectual of the right wing? It's pathetic.
So finally, another part of his op-ed, I guess, touches on what he thinks if these allegations are true. Even if true, what happened to her was clearly wrong, but it tells us nothing about Brett Kavanaugh since the age of 17. But for the record, I don't believe her story.
The whole setup is, who cares if it's true? At the very end, he says, by the way, of course I don't believe her story. Why, on what basis do you not believe her story? So for example, we explained in the beginning, we don't know. More evidence came out, then we explained, hey, listen, she talked to her therapist. The therapist wrote down the notes in 2012, 2013. That's a good reason to believe her. There's at least some evidence. It's hard to know what happened on that day. We're trying to have a reasonable assessment of the fact scenario. His reasonable assessment was, of course I don't believe her. I don't believe her. But so what if it happened? So what if he tried to rape a 15-year-old? What's the big deal? Wow, that is quite intellectual of you.
So there's one final component to this story, and I'm sure that there are more smears happening as we speak, as we do this video. But there was an individual who appeared on CNN. Her name is Carrie Severino, and she's with the Judicial Crisis Network, the same group that we talked about earlier. And she had an interesting way of describing the allegations. Take a look.
Her allegations cover a whole range of conduct from boorishness and to rough horseplay to actual attempted rape. And so obviously if you go to rape, yes, that is a really serious allegation.
Okay, I don't think anywhere in there she's saying this is boorish horseplay at all in her letter. I don't think that's at all what she's suggesting.
She's certainly implying that it's attempted rape, but I think you have to look at there's 35 years of memory that we're trying to play with here, and I'm saying that the behavior she describes could describe a whole range of things. I know her perception of it was one way. I'm just saying I think we have to get all of the facts. That said, Judge Kavanaugh says this didn't happen at all. So under any interpretation, he says no, that I was not at a party like that. This didn't happen.
Wow, Carrie, you really need to work on your spin, skills, because you were really struggling there, weren't you?
Yeah, well, because they have to have a woman go out and say it. So they're like, hey, Carrie, you drew the short straw. Go out and defend attempted rape. Well, how are we going to do that? Well, look, you're going to have it in the range of options so that you don't seem like the worst person on earth. You don't seem like you're Dennis Prager. But in there, you're going to inject talking points, and we're going to test them out. Remember, Judicial Crisis Network, as we explained earlier, funded by these huge, and it's
corporate
all secret,
donors.
corporate and really rich donors who want Kavanaugh on the court for their own financial purposes. And so they're like, hey, listen, you're paid to do this for us. So describe the attempted rape as, quote, rough horseplay. And what they do is they send out somebody to do that first, and then if it works and people like it, then they repeat it. And then it becomes a talking point. Oh, it was just rough horseplay. It was just rough horseplay. And you'll see it over and over and over again. That was them testing it out. I got news for you, that test didn't work. So as you could tell from the reaction of the anchor at the time, who's kind of taken aback by it, the reaction online, our reaction, any decent person's reaction, you could have left it at, hey, it's so hard to know what happened on that day 35 years ago. No, you had to inject that talking point. And when you characterize attempted rape and covering a woman's mouth while trying to rip her clothes off as rough horseplay, well, it harkens back to, well, that's not torture, that's just, enhanced interrogation. And those aren't detention centers. What were they calling them? Family residences or something along those lines. So no, it's not rough horseplay. And it's sick that you're being paid to say that, to see if you guys can get people to believe that it wasn't what it actually was, well, apparently, according to the allegations.
In America, you can pay anyone to say anything, doesn't matter. So let's take a break. When we come back, some of Trump's reactions to this story, and then later in the show, we will touch on the US relationship with China following this whole tariff and trade war.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks. Quick note from a sponsor, that's Down Ticket. So you guys know, I've talked to you about it before. I really like these guys because they even the score between the big money and us. So it's downticket.com. Go to your mobile device and put in downticket.com. I put my watch list and my opposition list on election night, last election night. We talked about it. I've got Democrats and Republicans on my opposition list, and I don't have a lot of Republicans on my watch list, or the people I'm in favor of. So please check that out, make your own lists, and they're exactly the kind of sponsor we like, that allows you to track the candidates you like and the ones you dislike, and make a difference by donating, or at least just getting the news about them. So downticket.com. Okay, now I wanted to read one quote from a member here that they sent in earlier. This is Atheist Snail, so already we're having fun, or Atheistic Snail, I should say. Just signed up as an activist member. Without the TYT network and my online atheist community, I would be depressed into inaction by current events. Instead, I'm motivated and excited to fight for progressive secular values. Thank you, TYT. You've earned my support and my respect.
Oh, that's weird. Dennis Prager thinks that your secular values are sowing chaos in the country.
The kind of chaos that might actually prevent rape. So anyway, tyt.com/join to become a member. Speaking of which, let me read a couple of quick member comments for you. A lot of people talking about community here. So Kwezi writes in, I'm so excited that I finally made it to home from work in time to watch live. The only downside is that I have nothing to look forward to tomorrow at work. That's funny. You guys seriously get me through the day. It's so refreshing to know that there is a community of people who actually care about fixing what is broken in our country instead of just putting a Band-Aid on it. Well, we're right here for you, no question. Tamara517 says, super excited to watch live. I've been an activist member for over a year and I've wanted to participate forever. To keep it simple, thank you for giving me a gym to work out the muscle that is my brain. Love you guys. Thank you, Tamara. That's really, really nice of you. Last one here. Paul Sullivan says, funny how none of this matters since he was in high school. Almost like the black young men in prison for life for nonviolent crimes are different people from when they were 17.
Thank you.
Strange that it doesn't apply to them too.
Yeah.
So, that triggered an interesting idea. If the Republicans say, yeah, he might have done it, but he was 17. Maybe we can have a deal if you release everyone in prison who got caught for doing something when they were 17. You want to make that deal?
By the way, I don't even know if I really want that. I mean, of course, when it comes to drug offenses, I agree wholeheartedly. But rape and murder are serious, serious crimes. And 17 is different from 12. So.
Yeah, no, of course I don't want that deal. Some of the people that would be released are worthy of that release, and some people that committed terrible, terrible crimes at 17 are probably potentially still dangerous. So, but it makes no sense to have two different standards.
Right.
So that's a great point by Paul as well. All right, what's next, Anna?
All right. Donald Trump continues to support Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh, and even though Democrats in the Senate Judiciary Committee are calling for the FBI to do an investigation to either confirm or find some information about whether or not these allegations against Kavanaugh are true, Trump says that it's unlikely that the FBI will conduct the investigation. Now, part of the reason why is the FBI can't do that unless the White House signs off on it. And Trump has been clear in saying that he's not going to sign off on it. Now, before we get to that, though, I do want to show you the messaging from Trump that will be repeated over and over again. And it is to attack Democrats rather than address the real allegations lodged against Brett Kavanaugh. Take a look.
Judge Kavanaugh is one of the finest people that I've ever known. Never had even a little blemish on his record. I wish the Democrats could have done this a lot sooner because they had this information for many months and they shouldn't have waited till literally the last days. They should have done it a lot sooner. But with all of that being said, so you would have thought certainly that she would have brought it up at the meeting, not wait till everything's finished and then have to start a process all over again. But with all of it being said, but again, this is something that should have been brought up long before this. They had the information in July, as I understand it. It's very, it's very unfortunate they didn't mention it sooner. But with all of that being said, again, this should have been brought up a long time ago. Thank you.
Okay.
No, we didn't repeat any of that. He does the endless repetition by himself. And he keeps saying, with all that being said, that's why JR left that in there, because he's supposed to get to the actual point, but he can't help himself. And in fact, when asked about attacking the Democrats another time, he's like, well, I'm not going to do that today. I might do it in a couple of days. Okay, well, what difference does it make then? And besides which, you couldn't help yourself. And a good and fair question that we've been asking for a couple of days now is, you're claiming, okay, that's what some Democrats knew. How about the Republicans?
Right.
How did they have that letter ready of 65 women that knew Kavanaugh back when he was in high school? How'd they have that done in 24 hours? Seems like they knew too. Mitch McConnell, why did he warn you not to appoint Kavanaugh in the first place? As Anna pointed out days ago, did Mitch McConnell know? So those are good and important questions. Democrats, you should be asking those questions too.
Now, in terms of the FBI getting involved, Senate Democrats have been clear in that they're not calling for a criminal investigation. They are calling for the type of investigation by the FBI that was conducted when Anita Hill came forward with her allegations against Clarence Thomas. To, if Kavanaugh didn't do it, maybe there's a way to clear his name. They just want this to be investigated and they want the FBI involved. And Trump doesn't seem willing to get the FBI involved. Now remember, he doesn't seem to have much love for the FBI in the first place. But the Justice Department released an interesting statement. They said the allegation does not involve any potential federal crime. The FBI's role in such matters is to provide information for the use of the decision makers. Okay, so the DOJ acknowledges that the investigation would be for information, so people can use that information to either confirm or vote against Kavanaugh, but they don't want to do that either. And then Trump addressed this as well during his press conference, and here's what he had to say.
We have time available. We will delay the process until it's finished out. I guess we've invited everybody. I can tell you this, that Judge Kavanaugh is anxious to do it. I don't know about the other party, but Judge Kavanaugh is very anxious to do it. And a delay is certainly acceptable. I don't think the FBI really should be involved because they don't want to be involved. If they wanted to be, I would certainly do that. But as you know, they say this is not really their thing.
Really? I haven't seen anything from the FBI indicating that they don't want to be involved in this. The only thing I have seen from the FBI is a statement indicating that they can't do the investigation unless the White House sanctions it.
Well, I mean, this is a man who thinks cooperating with federal law enforcement maybe should be outlawed. So it's unsurprising that he doesn't want federal law enforcement involved in actually gathering evidence. So of course the FBI said no such thing. And it's not that complicated. It's true, it's not a federal crime. The FBI is not investigating to arrest Kavanaugh or anything. It might be a state crime, but not a federal one. But the FBI does background checks. This is the most important background check there is. This is exactly what they did, as Anna pointed out, with Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas. So why wouldn't you just apply the same standard? Or are you afraid what they would find?
And then one final thing is Mark Judge, who was allegedly the other person in the room when this attack happened. says that he does not want to testify before the Senate, specifically the Senate Judiciary Committee. Both Dr. Ford and Kavanaugh have agreed to testify. However, Mark Judge says, no, I did not ask to be involved in this matter, nor did anyone ask me to be involved. The only reason why I am involved is because Dr. Christine Blasey Ford remembered me as the other person in the room. He also says, in fact, I have no memory of this alleged incident. Brett Kavanaugh and I were friends in high school, but I do not recall the party described in Ford's letter. So his defense so far has been, I don't remember, I have no recollection. I think that's an interesting way of handling it. There hasn't really been a flat out denial of what's been alleged.
There was yesterday. So it went like this. At first he said, I have no recollection. Then he said, no, it's absolutely nuts.
Oh, he called it nuts, that's
yeah,
right.
But today it's interesting that he went back to, I don't recall. And remember, he's written books about his struggle with alcoholism, etc. That might be one reason why he doesn't recall, or it might be that he's like, what if they get other evidence? So it's easy for me to say I don't recall. I was binge drinking at the time, right? So of all people, I think Megyn Kelly made an interesting point yesterday when she said, why would Dr. Ford put Mike Judge, a friend of Kavanaugh, in the room if she made it up? If you're gonna make up a story, you wouldn't put a corroborating witness for him in the same room. And Dr. Ford's a 51-year-old professor. She's not, and again, she'd have had to make it up in 2012 when she talked about it earlier. So none of that adds up. One more thing, at least Judge was sophisticated enough to say, I don't remember if I was at a party like that. Orrin Hatch screwed up while defending Kavanaugh and recently said, Kavanaugh told me in a meeting that he wasn't at that party. Wait a minute, she never said which party. She never said which date. So then people were like, what do you mean? This was Kavanaugh, does Kavanaugh know the party that she's referring to? And then Orrin Hatch's spokespeople had to be like, no, Kavanaugh didn't say that to us. He said he doesn't remember being at a party like that. What does a party like that even mean, by the way? You don't recall being at any party where you were drunk, where people were going swimming when you were 17 years old in the summer? Okay, so that little backpedal I thought was a little telling too. And again, these guys seem to have known for a long time that this might become an issue. How would they know it was going to become an issue if they never heard from her? That means they might have heard from him. And if they heard from him, then she's clearly not making it up.
Let's take one more break in this hour. When we come back, we will talk about China. There's a lot that isn't really being reported, so we'll go into those details. And then later on, some of the women who voted for Trump now possibly regretting their decision. That's a really interesting story. All right, for all the members, you're gonna get the whole show whenever you want, obviously. For some of you, the episode ends here. But remember, there's a whole 2-hour show. Make sure you get that anytime you want by becoming a member, tyt.com/join. All right, we'll be right back.